Auschwitz I Birkenau concentration camp. Auschwitz, a comprehensive chronicle of horror and humanity, a gateway to hell. In the dark tapestry of human history, few places echo with the chilling resonance of Auschwitz I. A name that once belonged to a quiet Polish town, Auschwitz, has since become synonymous with death, cruelty, and the most unfathomable expressions of human evil. Established in 1940 by Nazi Germany during their occupation of Poland, Auschwitz I was the genesis of a vast system of camps designed to imprison, exploit, and ultimately exterminate those deemed unworthy of life under Hitler's twisted ideology. Yet within this abyss, amid the stench of death and the silence of despair, glimmers of defiance and dignity endured. This is not only a chronicle of horror, it is also a solemn tribute to the unbreakable human spirit that resisted annihilation even in its darkest hour. The genesis of Auschwitz. The roots of Auschwitz I trace back to the brutal logic of the Nazi occupation. In the spring of 1940, as Poland writhed under the iron heel of German control, Nazi strategists sought a location to house the growing number of Polish political prisoners, intellectuals, clergy, teachers, and anyone suspected of opposing the regime. The town of Auschwitz offered an ideal location. It lay at a crossroads of railways and already hosted a series of abandoned brick barracks formerly used by the Polish army. The Nazis renamed the town Auschwitz and quickly repurposed the barracks into a facility that would become the prototype for all that followed. With cold, bureaucratic efficiency, Auschwitz I was born not merely as a detention center, but as a crucible in which the worst instincts of mankind would be unleashed. June 14, 1940 marked a bleak milestone. The first transport of 78 Polish prisoners arrived by train from Tarnów. These men, mostly young and educated, included Catholics, Jews, scouts, doctors, and resistance fighters. They were forced to disembark under the barked orders of SS guards and immediately herded into the reeking, overcrowded barracks. Stripped of their names, their identities were replaced by numbers crudely tattooed on their arms, a branding of dehumanization. Their hair was shaved, personal belongings confiscated, and they were dressed in coarse, striped uniforms that symbolized their loss of individuality. The air of fear was thick and oppressive. The walls of Auschwitz were already soaked with the echoes of anguish. Initially a camp for Polish prisoners, Auschwitz I rapidly evolved into a melting pot of Nazi persecution. Inmates from across Nazi-occupied Europe arrived in ever-growing numbers: Soviet prisoners of war, Roma and Sinti, Gypsies, Jehovah's Witnesses, political dissidents, and homosexuals. The camp's population exploded far beyond its intended capacity, resulting in appalling overcrowding. Each group was marked not only by their number, but by colored triangles sewn onto their uniforms: red for political prisoners, green for criminals, pink for homosexuals, purple for Jehovah's Witnesses, and yellow for Jews. These symbols dictated their place in the brutal hierarchy of suffering. Disease spread quickly. Lice and rats were constant companions. The stench of latrines, unwashed bodies, and decay filled the air. A day in hell, daily life in Auschwitz. Auschwitz I operated on a schedule of inhumanity. The prisoners were awakened before dawn by shouts and whistles, often without time to relieve themselves or eat. They stood for hours during roll calls in snow or blazing sun, often enduring beatings or executions if anyone was missing or fell out of line. Labor details followed: construction, farming, digging ditches, or working in factories tied to German war efforts. The labor was not just forced, it was designed to kill. Malnutrition, exhaustion, and abuse claimed thousands of lives long before any gas chambers did. Rations consisted of bitter coffee or watery soup, stale bread, and occasionally a small slice of margarine or sausage. Hunger gnawed constantly, reducing once strong men to walking skeletons. Yet still prisoners shared food, whispered stories, and tried to preserve fragments of humanity amid the horror. Block 11, the black heart of the camp. Block 11, known as the Death Block, was the epitome of Nazi sadism. A prison within a prison, its cells housed those accused of defiance, escape attempts, or imagined infractions. Inside were standing cells, tiny spaces in which 4 men were crammed for days, forced to remain upright without room to move or lie down. Other cells were designated for starvation, where prisoners slowly perished over weeks. In the courtyard between blocks 10 and 11, SS men carried out summary executions by firing squad. It was here too that the first experiments with Zyklon B gas were conducted, testing not just a chemical, but the future method of industrialized death. Dr. Mengele and the atrocities of science. Science was perverted into horror at Auschwitz III. Among the most infamous figures was Dr. Joseph Mengele, the Angel of Death, who conducted grotesque medical experiments, especially on twins. With a calm demeanor and a white coat, Mengele selected his subjects at the ramp, then subjected them to blood transfusions, organ removal without anesthesia, and disease injections. Other doctors sterilized women, infected wounds with gangrene, and tested the effects of poisons. These experiments were not intended to heal or help. They were tools of racial ideology, designed to further Nazi fantasies of Aryan supremacy and control. The first Zyklon B massacre. In September 1941, the SS undertook a grim experiment in the basement of Block 11. They sealed 600 Soviet prisoners of war and 250 sick Polish inmates inside, then introduced Zyklon B, a pesticide that would become the instrument of genocide. The prisoners died agonizing deaths, clawing at the walls in darkness. This moment marked a horrifying transformation. Auschwitz, I was no longer just a concentration camp. It had taken its first steps toward becoming a death factory. The camp orchestra, music in a place without mercy. Auschwitz's horrors were underscored by a surreal soundtrack. SS officers forced prisoners to form orchestras. Musicians who played classical and folk music as slave laborers marched to work, as bodies were hauled to crematoria or during public hangings. This grotesque twist, beauty used to frame brutality, was part of the psychological torment. For some, the music was a temporary mental escape. For others, it deepened the agony. Still, the orchestra played on, their fingers trembling not just from cold, but from the crushing weight of their fate. After the war, the world grappled with the enormity of what had occurred. At the Nuremberg trials, evidence from Auschwitz played a pivotal role in convicting top Nazi leaders. Camp Commandant Rudolf Höss was captured, tried and executed in 1947, ironically, on the very grounds where he had overseen so much death. Yet justice was imperfect. Many perpetrators escaped punishment, blending into post-war society. Today, Auschwitz I stands as a museum and solemn memorial. The barbed wire, crumbling barracks and haunting displays, piles of children's shoes, suitcases with names, locks of hair, confront visitors with the reality of what was done. Survivors' testimonies echo through time, reminding us that silence is complicity. Millions visit each year, not for spectacle, but for remembrance. Because forgetting is the first step toward repetition. The story of Auschwitz is a wound in the conscience of the world. It is a place where death was administered with chilling efficiency and where human beings were reduced to ash. Within that abyss, we also see courage, solidarity, and the enduring will to survive.